Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call the special meeting of the Elmwood Park Mayor and Council for Thursday, October 29, 2020, to order at 4:03 p.m. On roll call, Council members Fasolo,
Here.
Golubek,
Here.
Ingui,
Here.
Pellegrin,
Here.
Wetchler,
Here.
Council President Balistrary,
Here.
Mayor Coletti.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Erin. We'd like to welcome everybody here this afternoon, on this rainy afternoon. So let us get started by first standing for a prayer and flag salute. Oh God, our Father, we ask you to bless our meeting, which we entrust to your, entrust to your fatherly care and protection. Please remove all selfishness and prejudice from our hearts and implant therein a keen sense of justice and a greater love for you and our neighbors. Guide us in our deliberations so that our decisions will always please you and bring your peace and happiness to our community. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Whereas Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of the State of New Jersey require at the commencement of every meeting a statement of compliance be read by the presiding officer. Now, therefore, be advised that the meeting requirements for this meeting have been met by publishing a special notice in the Record and Herald News and by posting such notice in the office of the Borough Clerk, as well as in a public place within the municipal building, and by notifying interested citizens. Said notice was posted on October 13th, 2020, and again on October 26th, 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is being videotaped and will be on Cablevision Channel 77 on Monday at 3 p.m. and Thursday at 11 a.m. The video will also be available on the borough's website at www.elmwoodparknj.us. Erin.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Sorry, this mess. Sorry.
I thought that's what you were waiting for.
Moving on to our next agenda item, ordinances being read on first reading. Resolution R-415-20, introduced ordinance number 20-33 on first reading. Be it resolved that an ordinance entitled, an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 Administration, more specifically Article 3 of the Code of the Borough of Elmwood Park, titled Department of the Local Government, more specifically Section 2-27, entitled Police Department, more specifically Section 2-27.1, entitled Creation of the Department Members. Be it resolved that a final hearing on said ordinance will be heard in the municipal building on Thursday, November 12, 2020 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter, same can be heard, at which time any persons interested in said ordinance can be heard. Be it resolved that the Borough Clerk be, she is hereby authorized to advertise in a legal newspaper a notice of introduction and final hearing as required by law.
May I have a motion to introduce the ordinance?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
On roll call, Council members Fasolo,
Yes.
Golubek,
Yes.
Ingui,
Recuse.
Pellegrin,
Yes.
Wetchler, Council President Balistrary.
Recuse.
Motion carries. Moving on to Resolution R-416-20, introduced ordinance number 20-34 on first reading. Be it resolved that an ordinance entitled Bond Ordinance to amend Sections 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 11 of the Bond Ordinance, Ordinance number 19-15, entitled Bond Ordinance to authorize the making of various public improvements and the acquisition of new communication and signal systems equipment, new information technology equipment, and new automated vehicles, including original apparatus and equipment in by and for the Borough of Elmwood Park in the County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $1,585,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds, to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds, adopted on August 15, 2019. Be it resolved that a final hearing on said ordinance will be heard in the municipal building on Thursday, November 12th, 2020 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter, the same can be heard, at which time any persons interested in said ordinance can be heard. Be it further resolved that the Borough Clerk be and she is hereby authorized to advertise in a legal newspaper notice of introduction and final hearing as required by law.
Erin, could you break that down for us?
I believe this was the bond ordinance for the 2019 that used for some of the payment of the 2019 road program, and being that there were two change orders, there was not enough money on the bond. So the CFO put in a request to our bond counsel to make an amendment.
Thank you. May I have a motion to introduce the ordinance?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
First by Wetchler, second by Pellegrin. On roll call, council members Fasolo,
Yes.
Golubek,
Yes.
Ingui,
Yes.
Pellegrin,
Yes.
Wetchler, Council President Balistrary.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now for ordinances being read on second reading. Resolution R-417-20, introduced ordinance number 20-32 on second reading, whereas a public notice has been given by the Borough Clerk that an ordinance entitled Ordinance of the Borough of Elmwood Park, County of Bergen, New Jersey, adopting a redevelopment plan for the rehabilitation of certain properties situated along Market Street and vicinity. Whereas said ordinance was introduced and passed at a meeting held on Thursday, September 17th, 2020, and that further consideration of this ordinance would be taken up at this meeting. And whereas all persons interested in said ordinance were given an opportunity to be heard concerning the same, now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Elmwood Park that an ordinance entitled Ordinance of the Borough of Elmwood Park, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, adopting a redevelopment plan for the rehabilitation of certain properties situated along Market Street and vicinity pass on final reading.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an ordinance that we've been working on for quite some time. It has to do with the redevelopment of our Market Street, something that's been in the back of all our minds for quite some time. It's been part of this council and former councils, and we're finally getting to a point where it's going to come to fruition. This has gone before the planning board. Our chairman from the planning board is here with us this evening. Jeff, would you be so kind and just come up and let us know the outcome of the opinion of the planning board on this?
Okay,
Yeah, right there.
we're along with the council, met many times with the topology group, which was the
In the mic, Jeff, please. So
It's turned on, but in order, the computer needs to pick up your sound, so that microphone is turned on.
How about if I just speak loud?
It-
If anyone cannot hear me, let me know, please.
It's still not registering on the computer. Maybe if someone can let him use their mic. It's a wireless microphone.
Thank you. Okay, maybe I'm going to sit down. I'll sit
Sorry,
there.
Jeff, thank you.
It's okay. You're the youngest here, so probably you're less prone to have any sort of... Well, anyway, so the planning board, along with the town, with the mayor and council, and prior councils and mayor and council, it was decided that, along with many communities in the area, in Bergen County, other counties besides, I know the gentleman, Chris Colley here, the planner for topology, they're working up in Morristown for redevelopment there. That many of the communities being older, and maybe I can give a little history, and please jump in if you need to. Because of the housing stock being aging, many of the commercial areas have aging stores, buildings, and things like that. That redevelopment, a plan is attempted to be developed along with topology, where they did develop a plan, and the community is involved in that. There were surveys that were put on the town's website, and I believe it was 247 people participated in the survey. And they compile all the information gathered from that, and they come up with a plan, simply an overlay of the general area, which involves Van Riper Avenue, some distance off of Market Street, going north and south, and it heads east toward New York, I guess you might say, so everybody understands, on Market Street. Includes up St. Leo's Church, the Presbyterian Church, all the areas around that area. Many people, maybe you got notices who live in that area to let them know what was going on, so they could be at meetings and things. Public meetings have been held. There was a public meeting on October the 4th where the planning board considered what was pretty much the finalization of the plan, what you're looking at there. And it gives an idea of what can be done. Again, nobody's house at this point is going to be condemned. Something further down, there are different issues that can occur and different things as it phases forward, but nothing at this point. So the planning board in the end did approve it, and they move it forward as is required by law to the council, and that's where they are today. Again, I hit your microphone, sorry about that. So is it proper for me if I can take any questions, if people have questions where,
Counsel, you have a problem with that?
because this is, it is the second reading
All right,
anyway.
why don't we hold till we open to the
Okay.
public?
Okay,
All right, yes,
so, Mr. Colley, do you have anything that maybe
yeah. Chris is our planner, ladies and gentlemen, and before we open it for questions to the public, is there anything you'd like to put out there in addition to what our planning board chairman has so eloquently said?
I do want to emphasize, and if I could just say this, that the planning board, after reviewing this with everyone, that was at the meeting, and then part of the planning board has approved this plan, and it is forwarded then to the mayor and council. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank
Chris.
you. I'll introduce myself for the folks that are here that haven't met me. My name is Chris Colley. I work with a firm called Topology. We were appointed by the borough about a year ago as the borough planner. Prior to that, the borough had asked us to do a study of the Market Street area, sort of initial analysis. I'll say one thing. We're working on a master plan reexamination right now, and like one thing that strikes you when you review the borough's old planning documents is that there's been this desire to make improvements to Market Street for decades, frankly, right? And it sort of just keeps coming up over and over again in these planning documents, the need to improve Market Street. So this redevelopment plan is a step in that process, a significant one. I'll take whatever questions on the plan itself. I just want to emphasize two things about the document, both of which were touched on by Chairman Freitag, but I'll sort of underline one. This is an overlay zone. So what that means for you practically is if you own property on Market Street, your zoning, what's currently there, remains. So the existing zoning stays in place. All an overlay zone does is it adds more options into the zoning. So if you're concerned like, oh, I have this use, it's currently permitted, will it still be permitted? The answer is yes. It's an overlay zone, it just adds. And then second, another question that often comes up in meetings like this relates to condemnation, and there is no condemnation permitted under this redevelopment plan, period. So those are my sort of 2 words of introduction. Hello, nice to meet those of you who haven't, and I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and we want to move on now and have a motion to open to the public. All in favor? Anyone from the public here to speak on this ordinance and this ordinance only, please address your questions to me, and I will delegate. If I can't answer, I will delegate it. When you come to the microphone, state your name and address. Should this thing be plugged in?
It's a wireless microphone.
So is it working? Jeff, see if the mic is up.
You have to talk directly into the microphone, sir, and it was cleaned prior to being put up there. So I did have it
Can you
on.
hear me now?
Sir, you can lower your mask for the purpose of speaking into the microphone.
My name is Robert Fabian. The property that I'm interested in is block 1012, lot 11. Talk about zoning. The map on page 17 has Market Street marked as NC. I haven't been able to find any explanation of what NC is. That's my first question.
Chris, are you capable of answering that?
Yeah, so the NC zone is neighborhood commercial. NC zone is the existing zoning. From memory, it was created in 2016, 17 maybe, but basically it's similar, almost exactly the same as the CL zone, which was the previous designation of Market Street several years
Because there
ago.
were explanations of the other zoning, but not for NC, which is the subject of this meeting. So tell me again what it is?
It's called the Neighborhood Commercial Zone.
Got it.
And I can point you to, I can point you to in the existing zoning where the standards are for that, if you'd like me to. This plan won't change any of that existing zoning, including the NC. So whatever the existing NC is, will remain in place and remain an option.
Because I found it interesting, there were descriptions of a variety of other zones, but not NC.
Okay.
Most of the properties on Market Street have no off-street parking. Is there going to be any further problem in that regard?
Let me say this, and then I'll give it to Chris. The whole purpose of what we're doing is to have development there that takes care of its parking within its own building. And that's what's given us the impetus to want to create this redevelopment zone. Chris, you'd like to add on to that?
I think that's a very good summary. Yeah, we know that parking is always an issue on Market Street. There are parking standards that are in there. You know, what the mayor said is true. There's an obligation to provide parking through development of this plan.
But there is no off-site, there is no on-site parking for almost all the properties on Market Street. So how do you reconcile those two things?
Sure. So one of the challenges that we found looking at properties in Market Street as it relates to parking is that the parcel dimensions are small, and that makes it difficult to have parking on site. So the bulk standards that are included in the plan are really designed in a way to try to incentivize people to, if they use the overlay zone, to assemble multiple properties, to allow them to either put parking in the rear or to incorporate parking into the structure. So
Once again, those properties find it impossible to have on-site parking.
Well, that's,
So you're telling them to buy other properties or to make other arrangements, so forth and so on. It's physically impossible for most of these properties to have on-site parking.
this plan is for, hopefully for a developer to come in, purchase properties. At that point, it will give enough square footage to get what he needs to survive, his building to survive, with the proper parking on that parcel.
So in other words, if a current property owner wants to sell to a developer, that developer is going to be required to buy other adjacent properties to meet this requirement. That's going to lower the value of current property owners because their properties are now worth less because any buyer has to buy other properties to meet the requirements.
I differ with that, sir. I think, if anything,
That's what he explained. But go ahead.
I think, if anything, the property value will go up, because if it's feasible, a developer will come in, he'll know his numbers, he'll know what he has to buy to make his project work, and at that point, anything he has to buy will probably sell for premium.
In other words, developers say, oh, if I want to buy here, I got to buy more property. That's going to make it less desirable for developers to buy any of the properties on Market Street.
Once again,
It's, simple economics.
I think it's just the opposite, but that's my opinion alone. But let's ask the planner what he thinks.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Mayor. A developer who was to come in and acquire property or attempt to acquire property to take advantage of this overlay zone, one of the reasons they're going to take advantage of the overlay is because of the standards that are in here and because of what it could allow them to build. So I don't see the scenario that you're describing as being the outcome. I'll also just remind you that in the existing zoning does stay in place, right? So
So anybody who wants to buy a property has got to buy more property than what he actually wants. The only space next to these adjacent properties are probably residences. In other words, you'd have to buy some homeowner out in order to get the additional parking required by this.
That's correct. That's correct.
So again, the developer is going to have to buy instead of one property, he's gonna have to buy 2 or 3.
And that property value goes up because he needs it, or she needs it.
Mayor,
Well,
Mayor,
what they'll
can-
do is say, if I want this site on Market Street, I gotta buy 3 properties, making it saying, hey, I can go someplace else. I don't want 3 properties, I want that one.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Sir, if we pass this today and it's the law of the land, and there's a commercial property on Market Street, and someone's selling a standalone building on a tight lot, someone who wants to come in and buy it for that use and that use only would still be able to buy it for that use and that use only at whatever price the market dictates. So it wouldn't require that person to buy the parcels around it unless they had somewhat more of an ambitious idea for what to do with the land at a different use. But if they just want to come in and say, I need a commercial building, this building suits my needs, I'm willing to pay market rate, they buy it and their life doesn't change whatsoever. They have the use they bought. So I'm,
All right, that's not quite what he described, but that sounds,
well, so we're creating an overlay zone, but we're not forcing anything to happen. It would require people, private people on their own, to buy properties and come forward to the town with what they have in mind, and then the process that we have in place, that we always have in place, planning board, mayor, council review, whatever, would still be in place. So the people who still want to use Market Street to buy a commercial property for their use, that doesn't change, and that doesn't change for the current owner either.
where can I get a listing of what's allowed under NC?
He needs a zoning board.
No, it's in the zoning. I'd be happy to point
Because
you
I
in the right
found it
direction.
interesting that that was the one thing in the 60-some pages that wasn't described.
Right.
Could I say something?
Please, Jeff.
In 2016, as Mr. Potts spoke about, currently, where you get into streets like, that come off of Market, it is permitted, and that changed that, for them to be able to buy property and convert them to parking lots. There was a buffer zone involved with that. So if a homeowner wanted to sell his property, and it would increase the amount that he could get for spacing. If you wanted to buy a particular retail, as Councilman Gollumbeck stated, if they wanted to buy that property, they can then also have more parking by acquiring that property, which is currently maybe a residential. So that was the change then that they did, and that's what was created by doing that. I don't know how well that made out. It was available for people if they wanted to do it.
Most people don't want to move out of the homes they've had for generations, so forth and so on.
This would be the only,
Again,
I don't mean to interrupt you, this would only be if the homeowner wanted to sell. In that case.
Which again makes it terribly difficult.
And that also applied over on Route 4. There were some properties there.
Sir, none of this goes into action unless the resident or the commercial building owner wants to sell it or wants to improve it himself. This is,
Well, from what I understand, wants to change the use of that particular property.
we're not changing,
To find out what are the current allowed usages.
excuse me, we're not changing the use. It's an overlay zone. We're adding to, as it was described by our fellow council people here. Everything stays in place. This additionally is added into. So all the things you had previously in that zoning, you have plus on top of this.
And again, what I gather from this, it's going to be more difficult for those people who have property on Market Street to be able to go forward on a number of things, including sale of it eventually.
It should be more lucrative for them because you have this broader spectrum of zoning now. There's no limits.
Yeah.
Sir, nobody's going to be forced out of their homes.
No,
Nobody, this
no,
council
no.
will never force anybody
No, no,
out of
I
their home.
understand. I
It's
understand
at the
that.
resident's discretion if they want to sell.
You're talking about
Nobody
the
will
value.
ever put
I'm
anybody out
talking,
of
I'm
the
talking
house.
about the commercial properties on Market Street. Now, let me ask you this, what's the effect going to be on current property owners on Market Street itself?
I missed your question, sir.
What's going to be the effect of this on current property owners on Market Street?
None whatsoever, other than the fact that their property value is, when we vote this ordinance in, their property values are going to go up automatically due to the fact that they're in a redevelopment zone that offers these additional options for sale and building.
additional expenses for anybody who's got property on Market Street.
I beg to differ with you on that also, sir.
Well, then again, if they have to buy additional property other than a piece that they're.
They don't have to do
They
anything.
increase their costs.
They don't have to do anything. Nothing's changing. You don't have to do anything.
All right, so the effect on current property owners is zero. Is this what you're saying?
Well, not really. It's a plus, not a zero.
Well, whether it's a plus or not will be seen in the future.
I believe we will, sir.
Once again, who can I see to get the official description of zoning NC?
Can,
I believe Mr. Colley said that he could get that
Yeah,
to
I
him.
can provide that to you
How soon could I get it?
as soon as I'm back at a computer that has internet access, if you
All
provide
right.
me information.
we'll need your information, sir.
Sir, may I, is your last name, I'm sorry, Robert Fabian, Fabian?
Yes.
And what's your address, please?
My office address
Okay,
is 30 Plymouth Street, Fairfield, New Jersey.
thank you.
And the email address, if you can get that description to me, it's fabcpa@aol.com.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who cares to speak on this ordinance and this ordinance only? Please direct your questions to me, and I will delegate if I can't answer myself. Your name and your address, dear.
Good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Jessica Brazier. My address is 241 Market Street.
I'm sorry, can you spell your last name?
Absolutely, B as in boy, R-A, Z as in zebra, I-E-R.
Thank you.
So my question is, on one of the last statements you just made is that you think that this will be a bonus to the property value once this goes into effect. If the property value goes up, do my property taxes go up?
No, because,
Okay, that's good. We've got that on the record. That's good.
no, because
It's
you haven't realized the appreciation yet. It's
projected
hypothetical,
value.
in a sense.
Okay. And the other question I have is, I'm not sure if it's pertinent, but when I purchased my property, there was a Bergen County, I guess an ordinance that said that if you completely demolished or destroyed your property on Market Street, you would have to build 50 feet back from the center line. So when you're saying they would accumulate properties and possibly able to put parking in the rear, would that ordinance be bypassed so that you could, because 50 feet back from the center line is pretty far to then put parking
Put the
behind.
building, yeah. Chris, you have an accurate answer for her on that?
I'm not familiar with that specific ordinance that you're referring to. If it's from the county, you're
It's
saying
a
it's from the
county
county?
ordinance.
So I
It
would,
was a county ordinance when we purchased the property.
okay.
When we purchased our property, they made us give them a promise that if we ever completely demolish or destroy our property, we have to build 50 feet back from the center line. So I'm wondering if that's relevant to this.
It's a good question.
I don't usually stand up for a waste of time, but thank you.
Okay. I'm not certain on that. Anytime that you're involving a county road, there are county approvals that go along with that.
Well, since Market Street is a county road, I think that this is a relevant issue.
Yeah, certainly. And if someone were to build on Market Street under this plan, they would be required to seek whatever approvals are necessary from the county. And if that were to come up at that time, maybe that would affect their decision-making. Because it's a county standard, which I'm not aware of that you're citing, it's not something that we would put into a local ordinance like this one.
Well, you should check it out before you start promising.
Chris, can you get a definitive answer on that and get back to her with that answer?
Sure.
Your information, please, he's going to need the email.
My email is gloriasflorist@gmail.
Sorry, one more time?
Glorias Florist, Glorias, FLORIST @gmail.
Did you get that, Chris?
I got it.
And once you reply to her, she'll send you a rose.
Okay.
Depending upon where you are.
Okay.
Thank you. Good, great questions. Anyone else care to speak here on this ordinance only? Please come to the mic. State your name and your address, and then your question.
Yes, hi. My name is Maria Rivera. I live on 25 Van Riper. I want to know, if they build a building up, are they building like businesses, or are they gonna be like apartment buildings?
It's, I guess there's three different scenarios on Market Street. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. Three different scenarios. In those different scenarios, there are limitations on what could be done. So does that answer your question?
Because if they're gonna put like a building, and then they're gonna put, apartments on top, that's gonna be all renters.
This ordinance does allow for that to happen. Businesses on the bottom, apartments on top. But they can't do that on 50 by 100. They're going to have to buy up a mass piece of property. And maybe your property comes into question there as far as a potential sale too.
Yeah, because I know, like the gentleman was saying about parking, just traffic alone with that light that takes forever, when there's backup or an accident, it's all the way down Market Street. So I can't imagine double the,
Well, the thing here is,
apartment buildings.
what we're trying to do, years ago, this Market Street was deemed economical obsolescence, which means that an owner of a building has to think twice about expanding the building, remediating the building, because it's not, economically, it's not a sound move. So what we decided to do was look into it, look into this redevelopment, and see how we can enhance it. That doesn't mean this is going to happen, doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. If it does happen, it's going to be a wonderful thing for this town. As far as the parking goes, no building can go up unless it can satisfy the needs of that particular business and the apartments on top with proper parking allocated.
And Mayor, if I can.
Yeah, sure,
On the
please.
traffic question, so traffic's always a concern, for good reason. There's a provision in the plan for projects of a certain size, I don't have that off the top of my head, that they would be required to do a traffic impact study, and that depending on the findings of that study, that they would be required to make improvements to deal with the additional traffic that they're generating.
Because I know like it
Mis-
leads into your own street, like Van Riper, or even just like wherever it is. I'm just saying, everybody parks on that street because they can't find on Market Street, and that's what now.
This will not add a burden to that. Our zoning board, our planning boards would not allow that. Once again, whatever goes up on this piece of property that's purchased or bought has to accommodate its own parking, the needs of that specific business, that specific resident apartment. So if anything, there's going to be more parking, and that won't happen to where it backs up onto your block. Mr. Foligno.
Yeah, regarding the backup to the traffic light, I'm assuming you're talking about the light on River and Market that backs up. So there's a large-scale DOT project that's in the works to actually repurpose that intersection, widen it, and alleviate that backup, because it's a problem for us when emergency vehicles can't get through during certain times. But they're aware of it, and that plan is in motion. It's going to take some time, but at least they're addressing it.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you very much.
Right. Anybody else care to speak? Mr. Frost.
I have a proposal to present to them, and I'm sure you'll look at it, you're going to say, this is the biggest bang for the buck. To my credit, I have built over 1,000 buildings. The last year and a half of my career, I built 93 houses with the road, sewer, and everything, sold every one of them, 93. And my grandfather was the My father was the second building inspector. I didn't want the job, I was too busy making money. But the bottom line is, the proposal I'm gonna give, and I was told that there were no taking any questions. I have a lot of questions, I read every 64 pages, and I wrote them down, and I didn't bring them because I felt you're not going, this is strictly a presentation, not a question mark. So I'm ready for a lot of questions, but not with me now. So I'll mail them in if you want, or if you have another meeting you want to hear, I'll propose it. And I'm going to make a sketch of this thing, and nobody ever touched it. And I think I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. And if you saw it, you'd have to agree. The biggest bang for the buck you ever saw. Where you got 5 things that are benefiting from it. Not 1, not 2, 5.
We appreciate all those suggestions, Bob.
I have the know-how, I have the ability, my brain is not dead, it's still alive, it's still growing, my body's shot. So I just got out of the hospital yesterday. I had 2 heart surgeries, heart valve and a monitor.
Bob,
Still under doctor's
Bob, I know you a long time. You're like a, Bob, I know you a long time. You're like a cat with 9 lives. You only used up 7 of them so far. So you got 2 to go.
I had trouble hearing you, even with a hearing aid.
It was all good, I said. Everything I said was good. So I'd like to add also that Bob, you can hear his voice project. Besides being a very successful builder, he also was a singer. And you can see that projection in his voice. He doesn't need a microphone. Thank you, Bob. We appreciate that. Anyone else care to speak on this issue? If not, I'll close the public portion. Erin?
Yes, Mayor, if we can have a motion to adopt, if you so choose.
So moved.
Second.
First by Fasolo, second by Pellegrin.
All in favor?
I'll call the roll, Mayor.
Call the roll. Any discussion? I'm sorry. Now you could.
Fasolo,
Yes.
Golubek,
Yes.
Ingui, Pellegrin,
Yes.
Wetchler, Council President Balistrary.
Yes.
Motion carries. Also on the agenda for this late afternoon, early evening, we have one lone resolution, Resolution R-418-20, Capital Budget Amendment. Whereas the local capital budget for the year 2020 was amended on the 13th day of August 2020, and whereas it is desired to amend said amended capital budget section, now therefore be it resolved by the governing body of the Borough of Elmwood Park, County of Bergen, that the following amendments as attached to the amended capital budget section of the 2020 budget be made. And Mayor, this, just through you, just a quick explanation.
Please.
A capital budget amendment is always done after there's been a bond ordinance introduced or something of that matter. So being that there was a bond ordinance introduced earlier, that's why we have the capital budget amendment.
May I have a motion on the resolution?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
First by Wetchler, second by Ingui. On roll call, council members Fasolo,
Yes.
Golubek.
Yes.
Ingui. Pellegrin.
Yes.
Wetchler. Council President Balistrary.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Moving on, may I have a motion to open for public comments? This is for general comments on anything that went before us this evening. Motion, please. All in favor? Anyone from the public care to speak on any issue at this moment? If not, I'll close the public portion. Mrs. Delaney, do we have?
Mayor, we have an executive session, so if you can ask for a motion to enter into executive, we can proceed.
Motion, Mrs. Ballesteri, and
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into executive session. We appreciate you coming today and helping us along, some good questions that were presented to us, and we will definitely get back to those 2 people. Don't forget the rose, send that fellow Chris a rose.
Yeah, we'll see if he delivers something. Good job, Jess.
Okay, whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Borough of Elmwood Park is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Elmwood Park, State of New Jersey, that we enter into executive session to discuss litigation matters. All in favor?